Okay, so now this is a bit of an dive into dynamic policy. I explained it a bit earlier. This is now a presentation together with Imed, who has also worked extensively on this topic. And the idea here is now to explain a bit more what has been done, what does it actually mean, and so on. So now, first, this dynamic policy invocation. This is about, let's say, adding, modifying, or removing different type of traffic treatment policies, I kind of call it here, on a need basis. The key driving use cases, of course, to improve the quality of service, meaning kind of to provide a higher traffic handling priority in order to get a higher bit rate, for instance, or certain characteristics. These type of things generally require a collaboration agreement between the application service provider and the 5G system provider, because, of course, resources are used a bit differently. And in that sense, the general assumption here is kind of something needs to be in place between the operator, between the service provider and the system provider. Some example policies here is, for instance, quality of service to increase the traffic handling priority, for instance, for a premium service. Another example would be, for instance, a bit more on background service. So if you know that this is something what is not continuously consumed, you may kind of want to decrease a bit the priority. And the other one is, of course, there's a bunch of different charging policies and so on, and different type of things in place which is impacting the traffic charges, which can also be modified. Right, so I have now a bit detailed examples on these three use cases. But first, this information is done a bit in this perspective. So as indicated, this dynamic policy invocation, this is an on-demand, on a need basis thing. So here the concept is that the application on a need basis uses M5 API to interact with the 5G MS AF in order to indicate, okay, now I need to have a certain policy because of the certain use case. The device provides information with it, like the service data flow description, so which traffic flows should be treated according to this policy, what type of policy should be provided, and so on. So there's a bunch of information what's provided. The backend, so the application provider or application service provider, of course, has done upfront some provisioning. So there's information available about what policies are available, what policies are allowed, and so on. So there's information in the 5G MS AF to support the 5G MS AF to figure out how to create the system calls towards the 5G system. And afterwards, after this request comes in, the 5G MS AF is basically using the backend APIs to the 5G system in order to start applying, to start requesting the needed policies by using the according API calls which are available. And of course, depending on the network, depending on the deployment, it might be an interaction with a PCF directly, with a 5G directly with some network functions, or in some cases to interact with an F or other type of network functions. So in concept, this 5G MS is combining the request, and it's of course kind of also doing the isolation of between UIs. So here kind of on this leg, it is truly a backend API call, while on this M5 leg, it is truly an application level isolation of the information, right? Now, first example is premium costs. Here, the guiding use case is that the service provider, the application service provider, wants to offer a video service with 3 different quality ranges. So 4K, HD and normal SD operation, and of course kind of users with the HD service subscription should only access the content in HD quality, up to HD quality. But of course, anything below is possibly depending on the situation. It might be, of course, that you still get SD quality even if you have the HD subscription. But of course, 4K should be restricted. That should be kind of, that is outside of the subscription bucket. Here on the right side, it's basically indicated what type of parameters are needed. So on the M5 side, the UE, of course, when requesting information, the UE should provide, for instance, the policy description and so on. No, that's for the service announcement. The UE should become available, what policies are available, in what conditions to use what policy, and also to find information on how to access these services. And when actually activating such a policy, the UE should provide the a policy template identifier and some other information with it. In particular, of course, the UE should identify some information on the traffic flows which should be treated according to that policy. And here again, bear in mind, it's a shared network. There's multiple traffic flows ongoing, and not everything should be treated according to that policy. So that's kind of easy to understand. You want to have premium costs, and of course, in that sense, it should boil down to have an according cost bearer, which is basically ensuring that you get the needed bitrate for that service quality. And of course, you should only get the quality of service, what you actually need for your operation point. So when you have an HD operation point, you should not get the quality of service for a 4K type of stream. Right. The next use case is more unconditional zero rating. So the idea here as a concept here is that the sort of an conditional zero rating is possible. So basically the service access is free of charge or low of charge when the quality is below a certain threshold. So for instance, when even if you have a certain high quality service available, the user basically accepts to watch the content only in HD or in a lower quality in order to basically leave space for other users and so on. So here the idea is that the information is provided to the UE. Some sort of policy information is provided so that on one side the dash player knows, or the media player knows, it should not go to the highest possible quality. It should only kind of go up to a certain level of quality. And of course, the media session handler is provisioned in order to activate, in order to notify the network that now the client is consuming content compliant to this policy, meaning the client is fetching content which is always below a certain policy threshold. Right. And of course, the result out of this would be then a different type of charging rule, charging condition would be applied to that traffic. Right. The third case is we call it background download. So today in many streaming applications, you have the possibility to select an offline consumption. Of course, the initial design was you prepare yourself at home. You collect, you download a certain set of assets, and when you have no network connections anymore, you basically have the device preloaded. On the other side, of course, from a convenience perspective, it might be also interesting to run similar thing on a wide area system, on a public network, for instance. But here the concept would be that if you download something, the benefit is you are less prone to, would say, bitrate variations. And in principle, you can download the stuff at a lower bitrate, but then still have a convenience of a continuous watching afterwards. And here again, there's a set of parameters identified, listed, what is actually needed to activate the service. Right. Last but not least, and now it gets complicated, this is now a walkthrough of the parameter population. So in principle, it starts on the left side with the provisioning side. So on one side, of course, the application needs to be provisioned. Let's take this HD premium cross case again. The application is provisioned somehow to indicate, okay, this application can only get up to HD quality, but not 4K quality. Then here in this step, the system needs to get provisioned to understand the relation kind of what quality of service to ask for when a certain quality representation is requested. For instance, when the HD quality representation or when the HD quality subscription is requested, then of course a certain network policy should be activated towards a 5G system. Last but not least, of course, the manifest needs to be conditioned in some way, because also here the dash player or the media player in general needs to understand it doesn't make sense to go to, for instance, 4K resolution, because 4K is not allowed. So it can be a general manifest, which is basically augmented with additional information, like we call it here operational ranges, to tell the media player what is an acceptable range of operation. So when the user has an HD subscription and the manifest contains representations up to 4K, the operational range basically says the device is allowed to, the media player is allowed to fetch anything from SD up to HD, but 4K is kind of prohibited. Of course, this is kind of the provisioning side of the backend system. And this type of policy descriptions needs to be provided to the media session handler, so that depending on what is actually selected, and here there's some interaction with the media player and the media session handler. So depending on what representation, what quality is actually fetched, that the according dynamic policy instance is activated and the according parameters are provided to the 5G MSD system. This, of course, enables then that the 5G system is able to identify which traffic flows should be treated for the high quality. For instance, what traffic flows is subject to be treated with HD quality, and which other traffic flows are completely different applications or are other type of information, right? Here's a bit of a description of what I just verbally explained. We don't go through this again. If you want to kind of read this up more, it is described in some level of detail here. And yeah, you can also find more of this. So this are, for instance, is information which contains in an annex of 26512. So the idea here was to give an introduction of what these dynamic policies are intended for, what can be done with it. And yeah, as indicated in my first presentation, the idea here is to enable a better collaboration between the application service provider, for instance, the video service provider, and the actual network provider in order to provide an improved quality of service to end users. Right. So that was it. I hope it became at least a bit clearer what this dynamic policy is about. And again, I guess we can have one question.